It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Like a little intro finally.
I love it when guests have intros like this, especially with some very, very important things we have to chat about at your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso. Welcome back. This is SABC3. And being in lockdown means that we are consuming content online now more than ever before. And many people have chosen to become online content creators as a means of generating income safely from their home. While being a creator can be fun and meaningful, there are many guidelines one has to be familiar with across the various platforms. And one of these is the contentious issue of using copyrighted media in our content.
Yeah, of course. We've got the man himself. We're calling upon the legal eagle, our guidance expert. He is Ethan Stern. He's all the way from legalese.co.za, of course, and he's here to answer the question. And I, of course, want to know, can we use copyrighted media in my online content? And am I going to be held liable? I don't know. So many questions. Ethan Stern, of course, here to shed all the light. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's a bit early.
Yep, it always is.
It's a little early, but I'm good.
But what better time than to have a voice of reason, man? And look, it's a contentious subject we're talking about, copywriting. Yeah. I'm living in this space. I know Carl is as well. We use music all the time, totally. Throwing it in videos, and we don't even know if we're allowed to or not. So, man, like, what is it all about? What stake and what claim do I have when it comes to copywriting?
Cool.
What talk to me, man. I have so many questions.
Okay, so I think it's a big intro point. Like, this is a complex idea because there's often not straight lines. There's often a lot of gray area. And why? Because music and art is fluid, it's progressive, it's fluid, whereas law is all about creating rules. And if you're trying to match the two together, they were never supposed to be friends. But obviously, because content, music is so valuable, we need to create laws around them. So, but there's always going to be gray areas. So what is it? Well, any content or any artistic work that you create, and that's going to be musical works, literary works, cinematographic works, photographs, there's different categories in the Copyright Act. If you create those, you enjoy the ownership over them, and we call that ownership copyright. And in South Africa, copyright is automatic. So you don't need to register your song or your painting that you've made. Just from the fact that you've created it means you own the copyright in it.
Okay, I like that.
So when I look at music, I mean, music's it's the best way to like articulate it. You know, in fact, you said it's early. I would have wanted to use Wham! Wake me up before you go. And I can't use the video because it's Wham's video, and you can post it up on Facebook and Instagram and any of those platforms or YouTube, and then suddenly it gets shut down.
Totally.
You don't own the content, and I think that's a gray area for everybody. Do you have any insight as to what the algorithm is that shuts us down, pretty much?
Also, I got to just interrupt. Also, like, to stop us from putting all that effort into it and then can't even use it. Like, my week's worth of work.
Exactly. My Wham video.
Okay, am I allowed to just take this and have this?
Well, you just did, but I didn't like that.
Okay, sure.
But no, it's mine.
So intellectual property, copyright, works the exact same as regular property. Yeah. That's yours. You own it. I can't just take that from you without your permission. It's no different with music. Someone's put effort into it, and that's their Wham as an extreme example. They've made a lot of money. But, you know, a lot of people that are creating music out there for use online, this is what they do for a living. And every time someone uses it without their permission, they lose a sale. So, how do the algorithms work? Well, all these sites, they've got a big objective. How do they make sure people load content without taking other people's copyright? And they do it by scanning. There's probably a lot of complex AI involved that scan the videos. If they pick up something that's from a copyright library, they flag it and it's taken down. But yeah, I mean, the short answer of it is you're not supposed to use people's music, people's copyright that you don't own, unless you get permission to do it.
Now, this is where it gets a bit interesting, because now we're talking about permission. And if I use the example of the gram, when I upload videos, I have the option to upload a song with it as well now.
This gram.
I like what you did there.
Instagram sort of.
Instagram. Now, so what happens if I'm putting a video out on Instagram? It's a workout video. I put some music with it. I'm monetizing it because the brand's working with me on this. Now, what happens in that instant? I maybe have credited the artist instead of using the music. So is that cool? Am I good?
So the crediting, so it's a great question. Let's start with the crediting aspect. If I steal your iPad and say, this is Raul's iPad, I've stolen it, it still doesn't make it right. So just because you credit someone doesn't mean you're allowed to steal their stuff. So crediting doesn't make it right by any means. Are you allowed to use it? So there's a difference here between the offense and damages for the offense. So if you use someone's music, you've created you've done something wrong. But for the most part, no one's lost any money, no one's suffered any harm. If for a regular kind of Instagram or YouTuber putting something online when they're not monetizing it, no one's really suffered any harm. So the copyright owners won't really mind. Very different to if you're monetizing a video, if there's a brand behind it, or if, say, Expresso TV is using a Wham song as part of their marketing, then that's very different. And then the labels or people who own it are going to say, well, you've used my thing to make money. Why don't I get a piece of that money? So, the offense is always going to be the same, but the damages is what we're talking about. So if you're in the business, if you're a regular Instagrammer, I wouldn't worry too much about what you put in the background. Even if you use someone's copyrights, is a label really going to come after Eitan Stern, with my 300 followers? Very unlikely. Very different to you with your tens of thousands of followers who are there to see your brands and that's a bit different. So depending on how you're using the social media platform, you need to deal with copyright a little bit differently.
Right. Oh, you know what? The taste buds are tantalized, Eitan, and I know that there are many content creators as well as musicians that'll need to hear about this conversation. So now what with lawyer Eitan Stern? So our second part, we'll cover some very interesting stuff.
Yes, very much picking up where we left off with our previous discussion. I'm joining the discussion now because I'm really interested to find out more. And we are chatting to lawyer and director at legalese.co.za, Eitan Stern, as he breaks down the legal ins and outs of using copyrighted media online as a content creator, something that is happening, I would imagine, by the millions every day, because there are so many content creators out there, and you need a good track, man. You need a good tune.
Nice to have you, Instagram.
Thank you, man. Instagram?
Yeah, you're on our Instagram.
Thank you.
Yes. So
thanks, Raul.
we did chat a little bit about just covering the bases, but I think what needs to happen is there's something called fair use. And while all content creators and anybody making a video and using whatever they need to color it in, as you're mentioning, fair use is something that people need to know about. So can you elaborate for a second?
100%. So this is where the plot really thickens about copyright. It sounded quite simple at the beginning. You're not allowed to use people's copyright. But unfortunately, things are not. However, things are not that simple. So you've got this idea of fair use. And fair use says that in certain limited circumstances, you could use someone's copyright without it infringing their copyright offense. So you could use their song without committing a crime or a wrong to them. Put differently, I could take your iPad and for it not to be wrong. So there's limited circumstances, and this is going to be things like if you're using it for an educational context, if you're using it for political or social commentary or to comment on current events, if you're using it for satire, and there's a couple of others, and there's different contexts in how it's used. So, for example, every time the newspaper prints a story or mentions something, or if you see a news segment and they've let's say the news was about a piece of art or about a song, that's not going to be copyright infringement. Why? Because it's what we call fair use. Okay. And so it's important. So if you're using copyright, if you're using someone else's copyright, you could do it if it fell within a fair use category.
So how does fair use extend to cover versions? On TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram, so many emerging artists are using established artists' material to make a name for themselves, and they do it beautifully, and in some cases, it's almost given a second life to some songs.
Yeah.
So how does that fall into fair use?
Okay, again, complex. So, I think, Carl, you put it quite nicely, that there's a difference between when you're using something commercially and when you're using something socially. And if you think about it, again, the offense is going to be copyright infringement if you use someone else's track, but it's no record, well, I say no record label. Most record labels are not going to take action against an individual person who's using it something on TikTok or contributing towards a trend on TikTok. But if you're using it to monetize it in some way, they might. So, the fair use principle would look at, what context are you using it in? Are you using it on TikTok or YouTube to make money, or are you using it to comment on a current event? And here lies this real conundrum that's built in with copyright. The internet has taught us we need to share things as much as possible.
Yeah.
And musicians want to create songs, and for it to be shared as much as possible, you want as
They
many.
wanted to get onto radios.
They wanted to get onto radio.
Can
You wanted to get people buying it. You wanted to share. But at the same time, you want to hold it so that people aren't sharing it and not making money out of it. So it is. If it sounds complex, it is, because it is complex. There is a built-in conundrum there. And there's no exact rules, and each copyright owner really has the choice on how they want to deal with it. If you share something on TikTok and they don't want you to share it, then they could ask you to take it down.
So that really means that those copyright owners have to be on it, and they've got to be tracking what's going on and be really well connected to know what.
Yeah, and now there's great software. It's funny, someone from the show was asking me this earlier. There's great software that's out there for that now as well, that you can track where music's used online, and it will notify you and issue takedown notices. But the last thing to mention over here is that, while you've got the law, copyright, etc., you've also got the terms of the platform that you're using. So TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, they are going to have policies on how they deal with copyright infringement. And if you're using something on their platform, even if you're obeying the law and you're in the fair use kind of category in the law, if they say no, then it's no, because it's their platform and they can decide.
Chances are they'll just take it down.
So a quick golden rule with regard to it, check out the T's and C's.
Totally.
Make sure you're affair with all of those before you are posting.
Yeah, and it's actually, people always say, well, T's and C's is very boring, but check out YouTube. They've done it in a brilliant way. They've made videos around...
As they would.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing.
And they're like Sesame Street characters, I think, and they've made really interesting videos explaining how copyright works and how they use it. So go click on the little legal tab on YouTube, and it's done brilliantly. A really good example of how to explain to your audience what you can and what you can't do.
So what you're saying is the Cookie Monster could come and do your job. Could come and
100%. I would actually like it if the Cookie Monster did come to work one day. It'd be great.
Oh, so to all the budding content creators out there, or those of you that are just playing around on social media, hopefully this has given you some indication of where you need to begin. Maybe start with the T's and C's on your chosen platform, and then go and create some great content, man. Wham or not.